Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Verlicity AI podcast. I'm Christian Worthington, co-founder of Verlicity AI, serial entrepreneur and holder of multiple patents. I've launched several successful SaaS companies over the years, but I've got to say, nothing has disrupted my thinking like what's happening in artificial intelligence right now. Today's episode asks a big question. Is AI mankind's last invention? And more specifically, how will AI impact innovation? Because if you've been tracking the breathtaking progress of AI in the past year, like DeepSeek, Anthropic's Claude, or DeepMind's new biotech breakthroughs, you'll know just how quickly the game is changing.
And I'm Sandra Giffen, lawyer, intellectual property specialist, corporate governance specialist, and co-founder here at Verlicity AI. I've launched 5 startups and spent my entire career in the software industry, so I'm no stranger to the challenges of bringing new technologies to market. But AI is a whole new ballgame. In this episode, we're going to explore the force multiplier effect of AI, how it can double or triple productivity for software developers and researchers. We'll also take a hard look at whether AI might actually stifle innovation. Questions like, why bother developing a product if AI will do it in 2 or 3 years? We'll talk about ownership of AI-driven inventions, potential changes to patent law, and whether society needs to reconsider how we reward innovation in a world where humans collaborate with AI that already has massive built-in capabilities. And we're even going to ask the philosophical question, where do ideas come from?
Think of this as an all-encompassing look at the good and the bad sides of AI's transformative power. We'll back up our points with concrete examples and references so you'll get a real sense of what's happening on the front lines of AI-accelerated innovation.
And we want you to know that this episode is deeply personal to us both. We have spent our careers as entrepreneurs in information technology. We've created 5 startups, and Verlicity AI is our 6th. All of our businesses have been based on innovations we created.
Yes. I think back to companies we've started where all we had was a patent and a prototype. We'd go on the road, recruit investors, and build a team and get going. It was hard work, but we didn't have to compete with AI. AI could change all of this, and I wonder where our companies would be today if we had to take on the challenges faced by innovators today. In this episode, we're going to define the scope of this problem and offer some possible solutions based on our experience and research.
So get ready. We have a lot to cover. Let's jump right in by talking about AI's force multiplier effect in innovation. We're seeing it right now with software developers using Anthropic's Claude or OpenAI's GPT-based coding assistants. According to some preliminary studies, like GitHub's own research on Copilot, developers can nearly double their productivity using AI helpers for things like boilerplate code, debugging, or even architecture suggestions.
Exactly. I've spoken to developers in our own teams who say it's like having an ultra-smart pair programmer on tap 24/7. They're coding solutions faster, testing them quicker, and shipping new features in half the time. This doesn't just apply to coding, though. We're also seeing huge leaps in biotech with AlphaFold. DeepMind's AlphaFold essentially solved a decades-old problem of protein folding, and now researchers can model protein structures in days instead of years. According to a 2022 paper in Nature, AlphaFold's predictions helped scientists identify key sites for drug development. Imagine shaving decades off drug discovery timelines. That's world-changing stuff.
Right. And DeepMind is doubling down with new tools that let researchers systematically search chemical space for promising compounds. That process used to be like finding a needle in a haystack. Now it's more like searching a smaller, curated pile of hay, with AI handing you a magnet. We're also hearing about AI's potential to speed up material science, climate modeling, and more. The force multiplier effect isn't just hype. There's real evidence from academia and industry that AI is accelerating innovation at unprecedented rates.
I'm personally excited by the potential. As a serial entrepreneur, I see entire new frontiers opening up. And it's not just about big corporations. Small startups can leverage AI to punch above their weight class. They can do advanced research, run simulations, or prototype products faster than established players if they deploy the right AI tools.
Absolutely. So, on the plus side, AI can be the ultimate enabler of innovation. But there's a flip side to that coin. What about the risk of building something that gets rendered obsolete by AI in just a few years? That brings us to our next point, vaporware concerns, and the fear that AI agents might outpace human-built software.
AI can act like a wet blanket to innovation. To understand this concept better, we can look back at companies like Microsoft and Intel when they were accused of releasing vaporware. Vaporware isn't a thing so much as a strategy. It's a strategy used by a major player in a market who wants to frustrate the efforts of a smaller, less established competitor that has developed a superior product.
The accusation of vaporware is impossible to prove, but in principle can be illustrated by an alleged case of vaporware that occurred in the mid-2010s. At the time, Intel was having a difficult time producing a 10-nanometer chip. Intel dominated the semiconductor industry. However, they faced increasing pressure from competitors like AMD, who were catching up in terms of chip performance. Intel repeatedly announced and delayed its 10-nanometer manufacturing process, promising significant performance and efficiency gains. Intel's announcements reportedly influenced the market, with customers potentially delaying purchases of competing chips, waiting for Intel's supposedly superior 10-nanometer technology.
This reportedly allowed Intel to maintain its image of technological leadership. The result of vaporware can be devastating to competitors. Customers and investors keep their money in their pockets, and innovation is delayed or destroyed. However, in this new AI era, the concern about a vaporware scenario takes a curious turn.
Instead of a large company targeting a specific competitor with the announcement of a mythical product that either doesn't exist or is still years away from development, AI creates a cloud of uncertainty, or maybe a vapor of uncertainty that kills innovation. Imagine a well-funded AI lab teasing a next-gen model that can do everything your startup does, only better. Investors might freeze all funding for you. The question investors and developers might ask is, why build a product if an AI agent will do it better in 2 to 3 years?
Think about it. Startups often take years to find product market fit and maybe another few years to reach profitability. By the time they get there, AI might have advanced to a point where it can replicate that product or service with minimal input. And the AI promises to be free or extremely low cost. I can't imagine raising money to fund a venture that faces these types of headwinds.
That's not just paranoia. There have been real hints of this happening. For instance, some newly launched coding tools or specialized software are overshadowed within months by GPT-based plugins that replicate similar functionality. If you're a venture capitalist or an angel investor, you might start asking, why fund a new software company if I think a general AI could do it soon for zero cost?
I'm having those thoughts frequently these days. We have this scenario where AI is accelerating innovation and potentially threatening to undermine the entire motivation to develop new software solutions. It's like a built-in obsolescence, only the obsolescence is coming at AI speed rather than human speed.
Yes. For example, Google's DeepMind has shown demos of AI agents that can themselves generate code, or even propose new software architectures. This is moving faster than many of us expected.
And DeepSeek recently released their Janus Pro multimodal AI model that can take an image of a handwritten flowchart and generate a fully functional Python program. In other words, anything a human can doodle on a scrap of paper is potentially translatable into a fully functional invention by an AI.
So, for prospective founders, there's a legitimate question. Is my product going to be relevant in 3 years? Or will an AI agent trivially replicate it? The end result could be a disincentive to innovate if everyone's spooked by the possibility of AI overshadowing them. That begs the question for patents. If an AI can churn out an invention, who's the inventor? And if it's solely the AI's creation, is that invention even non-obvious?
I suppose the fact that this is such a new area of law presents a risk in itself. Anyone creating a so-called original work using AI needs to be concerned that they may be found to not own their work in the future. Are there any cases in the courts that give us a hint about how the law will handle creations made with AI in the future?
Yes. There's one case that has gone part of the way through the legal process. It not only deals with AI in the context of a creative work, but it also illustrates the tangled web that leads to an AI creation. It's a case involving the cartoonist Sarah Anderson, the well-known cartoonist, known for her popular webcomic Sarah's Scribbles.
Is this the first case of its kind?
No, but it's arguably the most significant and high-profile case to date that directly addresses the use of copyrighted material to train AI models.
So tell us more.
Well, Anderson discovered that some generative AI image tools, like those offered by Stability AI, the makers of Stable Diffusion, as well as other platforms, were allegedly using her artwork in their training data without her permission. When people typed prompts referencing her style, the AI could produce new images in a cartoon style closely resembling Sarah's Scribbles. This set off alarm bells, because from her perspective, that meant the AI was learning from her copyrighted work and essentially replicating it. She wasn't alone. Other artists noticed the same pattern with their own illustrations. So, Anderson teamed up with a few other artists to file a lawsuit in the Northern District of California. The gist of their claim is that Stability AI and other defendants violated their copyright by using their art without consent or compensation to train an AI model that can now churn out images in the style of these creators.
It's a huge deal because it touches on whether training an AI on copyrighted images counts as fair use, or if it's infringement. Does the AI copy the images or just learn from them like a student in an art class?
Right, and the case is still ongoing. In August 2023, Judge William Orrick ruled that the copyright infringement claims could proceed. He found that the artists had presented enough evidence to suggest that the AI company's actions could constitute copyright infringement.
I suppose it's hard to know which way this will go.
Yes. The courts haven't made a final determination on the merits yet. Earlier this year, the defendants filed motions to dismiss, arguing that the training process is transformative and that the model itself doesn't store images in a straightforward way. Anderson and the other plaintiffs say that's missing the point. Their exact copyrighted works were used as data, which they never authorized. So, as of now, no definitive ruling has been made on whether the AI companies actually infringed copyrights or whether the training process qualifies as fair use. The case is likely to be a long battle with possible appeals, meaning it could shape how AI training is handled for years to come.
This is such an important example because it shows how quickly real creators can get swept up in these AI controversies. I can also imagine this is very costly litigation, not the sort of thing you want if you're starting a business.
The legal bills will likely be in the millions if this goes through to appeals, which seems likely.
I understand that many artists support Anderson's stance, saying they feel exploited, like their works were essentially scraped from the internet for profit. Others argue that AI training should be considered fair use because it's about building a model rather than copying exact images. Either way, it highlights the confusion around who owns what in this brave new world of AI. And it also underlines the idea that some creators might be dissuaded from sharing work online for fear it'll just feed into AI training sets.
Precisely. And that ties right back to the bigger conversation. If the law doesn't clarify these issues, like whether and how artists or inventors are compensated for AI's use of their work, people may see AI as a disincentive, not a force for innovation. After all, if your creations can be absorbed by an AI and reproduced, why pour your time and talent into them?
And I can see why it could also be a disincentive to anyone building a business with an AI-developed creation. This case could set a precedent affecting other industries like software, biotech, or gaming, where AI models train on existing works. I think the moral of the Sarah's Scribbles case is to make sure you make your work so original that it sits well outside of the gray zone between something that's completely AI created and an original work. It's an incentive to do a significant part of the work yourself.
Yes. With that real-world backdrop in mind, let's continue exploring the broader question of AI ownership and the potential chilling effects on innovation. This question of ownership is already cropping up in copyright law for music, images, and literature. So the U.S. Copyright Office has issued guidance saying works created solely by an AI prompt, with no substantial human authorship, may not be eligible for copyright. It begs a broader question. If the AI can do it, is it obvious or not novel by default? Is the invention obvious to an AI and thus not patentable?
Yes. In software, if an AI can spin out a piece of code or an invention with a simple prompt, can a human developer claim inventorship or ownership? If it's purely the AI's output, some legal scholars argue there's no human inventor in the traditional sense. There's also a philosophical layer. If an AI is effectively an inventive entity, does that invention belong to the organization that trained the AI? Or to the user who typed in the prompt? Or to no one?
And on top of that, there's the question of non-obviousness. Patent law says an invention must be useful, novel, and it needs to be non-obvious to someone skilled in the art. In other words, it can't be something that anyone who knows about the particular field of endeavor would know or be able to figure out quickly. But if an AI, by virtue of its training data, can produce the same invention, is that invention truly non-obvious? We could see a future where someone challenging a patent could claim that your invention was obvious to an AI if someone skilled in the art simply typed a query that was obvious. Some experts, like those at the European Patent Office, have warned that existing frameworks aren't fully equipped to deal with AI's expansive capabilities.
Right, because patent law historically assumes a human inventor who invests time and effort to get beyond a normal, skilled person's knowledge.
Exactly, and that's the key tension. If everything is obvious to AI, we risk discouraging research and development. That's why some commentators say we need new guidelines. Are we going to say the skilled person is still just a human? Or are we revising the standard to account for advanced AI's capabilities?
We might see a new wave of AI obviousness arguments in patent disputes. If an AI system can generate certain solutions autonomously, maybe that solution wasn't as inventive as we thought. Or flip it around. Maybe humans using AI can invent truly novel things that no single human could have foreseen. How do we handle that scenario?
It's a genuine dilemma for regulators, courts, and innovators. Some scholars propose that if you do significant human input or direction, you can still claim ownership. But if the AI spontaneously comes up with an invention, it might be barred from traditional IP protections.
Even if the invention would eventually withstand a challenge in a court, Does the prospect of patents being more fragile in court cause investors to place less value on inventions? Entrepreneurs used to be able to rely on patents as a tool for raising money, but investors may be inclined to discount the value of the patent. This could negatively impact the ability of startups to raise money.
Sure, intellectual property, IP rights, patents, copyrights, trademarks have been around in various forms for centuries, but they fundamentally evolved to reward creators and inventors by giving them exclusive rights for a limited period. This exclusivity is meant to encourage disclosure of ideas, rather than keeping them secret.
Patents are really an exchange between the inventor and the society. The inventor gets a temporary monopoly, and the society gets a look under the hood.
One of the earliest modern patent systems emerged in Venice in the 15th century. Later, England's Statute of Monopolies in 1624 and the U.S. Constitution famously authorized Congress to grant patents to promote the progress of science and useful arts.
Everyone benefits. The inventor benefits from exclusivity during the 20-year term of the patent. The society benefits from learning about the invention, which fosters future inventions by allowing other inventors to build on the work. It avoids costly and needless wasted effort duplicating the work.
This limited exclusivity in exchange for disclosure is the backbone of modern IP. It's about balancing the need to incentivize inventors to invest time and money while ultimately benefiting the public with new knowledge. Now, with AI, we face a situation where the inventor might be an algorithm. If the AI can spontaneously produce new solutions, do we grant that AI entity a patent? Is there a human inventor at all?
That system worked well for incremental human-driven invention cycles. A single inventor or a small team invests years of research, obtains a patent, and shares methods. The market sees new technology, and after the patent term, it can be freely used by everyone.
Another dimension is the non-obviousness requirement for patents. If a large language model or generative model can produce a certain invention upon request, that invention might be deemed obvious to AI. Some scholars say that could make it unpatentable. The risk is that if AI can produce thousands of potential inventions quickly, human inventors might be discouraged. Or, conversely, they might rely so heavily on AI that nobody is sure who owns what.
And if no human invests years of research because the AI can do the heavy lifting, do we still need the same IP incentives? Or do we need new frameworks to ensure that humans keep guiding and funding the R&D process?
Right. And this is where the disincentive conversation really ties in. If IP law doesn't adapt, we risk undermining the entire reason IP exists, to stimulate and reward creativity and invention. AI could overshadow inventors so badly that the impetus to invent disappears.
So, historically, IP law was about incentivizing humans to share breakthroughs. Now, we might lose that incentive if the patent system can't handle AI-based innovation. We could see a surge in trade secrets or a slowdown in certain areas because the returns are uncertain.
Right. And this is where the disincentive conversation really ties in. If IP law doesn't adapt, we risk undermining the entire reason IP exists, to stimulate and reward creativity and invention.
Now, let's explore a quirky case that caused a lot of disruption in the patent world, the Daybus patent saga. Isn't that a great name? Sounds like the title to a John Grisham book.
Yes, this is a story of a man with a mission to give all the credit to his machine. We've explored the fundamental purpose of IP and how it's historically been about rewarding human inventors. But this is a real-life story that shook the patent world. It's called the Daybus patent saga, and it centers on a fascinating AI system and a very determined inventor.
Yes, Daybus is actually an acronym for Device for the Autonomous Bootstrapping of Unified Sentience. It was created by Dr. Stephen Thaler a US-based AI researcher and inventor who spent decades working on neural networks and what some might call creative machines. Dr. Thaler claims that Daybus can originate inventions on its own.
The saga kicked off when Dr. Thaler filed patent applications in multiple countries in 2018, initially with the European Patent Office, and then in the UK and US, explicitly naming Daybus as the sole inventor. In other words, no human was listed as the mind behind the invention. The idea was to test whether patent law could accept an AI as an inventor, which is exactly the scenario we've been warning might not be covered by existing frameworks.
I just want to be clear, was Dr. Thaler transparent about the fact that he was claiming the invention in the name of the machine?
Yes, Thaler said that Daybus was the inventor. In his patent applications, he explicitly named Daybus as the inventor and made it clear that the inventions were generated autonomously by the AI system.
What was the invention?
The Daybus filings described inventions like a special fractal container design and a light beacon that Thaler argued Daybus had autonomously generated. He insisted no human had contributed the inventive step beyond turning on the machine and letting it do its work.
I assume the EPO and other patent offices found themselves in uncharted territory.
Yes. The EPO delivered its decision in 2020, refusing to grant the patents because European law, in line with most international norms, requires that an inventor be a natural person. The UK Intellectual Property Office soon followed suit, and so did the US PTO in the United States. In each case, the reasoning was consistent. The concept of inventor in the patent statutes hinges on a human being.
Dr. Thaler wasn't deterred, though. He appealed in various jurisdictions, arguing that if AI truly conceived the invention, listing a human would be a legal fiction. He believes that recognizing Daybus as an inventor is simply the next logical step in the evolution of patent law. Even so, the appeals courts have upheld the rejection so far. In the UK, the Court of Appeal stated that only persons can be inventors. The same stance emerged in the U.S. federal court.
What makes the story compelling is Dr. Thaler's unwavering commitment. He's essentially telling the world, the law must evolve, because AIs can be genuinely creative, so why pretend a human did it? Whether you find that persuasive or not, it points to a real clash between current statutes, which never envisioned a non-human inventor, and rapidly advancing AI, which might, in certain circumstances, accomplish genuine invention-like leaps.
Precisely. For our listeners, the Daybus saga highlights that when we talk about AI inventorship, we're not just theorizing. There's an actual plaintiff, Dr. Stephen Thaler, who poured time, money, and legal resources into forcing the question, who or what can be named as an inventor on a patent?
And this question remains unresolved for the future. None of the rulings stated that AI-driven inventions can't be patented. They just insisted a human must be listed as the inventor. But if a future system truly invents autonomously, are we going to keep insisting on a human name being on the patent to satisfy a centuries-old definition of inventor?
That's why Daybus might be remembered as the canary in the coal mine. It exposed a flaw in our frameworks, long before AI might be robust enough to invent something truly revolutionary, like a new antibiotic or a breakthrough energy technology. Meanwhile, Dr. Thaler, love him or question him, has sparked an international debate about whether our oldest legal assumptions about inventorship need updating.
And that debate ties seamlessly back to our concerns about non-obviousness and ownership. If we can't definitively say who the inventor is, how do we assess that invention's validity? If the law says only humans can conceive something, yet the AI did most of the creative work, do we risk creating an entire class of orphaned inventions with no proper inventor? These are the dilemmas that might sound futuristic, but are already knocking on the door. So, with Daybus in mind, let's return to the question of whether AI ultimately enables or deters innovation, and what kind of reforms could help us navigate these murky waters.
Great. So we've discussed how AI is pushing the boundaries of traditional IP frameworks. But there's another critical layer, the international dimension of patent law. Many listeners might not realize that patent law isn't uniform worldwide. Different countries have unique rules on what's patentable, how non-obviousness is judged, and who qualifies as an inventor.
That's right, but there is a partial solution in place. Most major economies are signatories to the Patent Cooperation Treaty, or PCT, which streamlines patent applications across multiple countries. It's administered by the World Intellectual Property Organization in Geneva. Essentially, the PCT lets an inventor file a single international patent application that can then be pursued in each member state. But it doesn't unify the substantive laws, like what's an invention, or what's non-obvious.
Right, the PCT is more about procedures and timelines rather than setting a single unified global patent standard. Even with that, we still see a patchwork of national and regional patent offices, like the European Patent Office and the USPTO in the United States, each applying their own definitions of novelty, inventive step, and subject matter eligibility. And that's where AI poses real challenges. If a given country's rules say AI can't be an inventor, but another country leaves the door open or hasn't clarified that question, you get inconsistent outcomes. Imagine an AI-driven invention that's patented in Europe but refused in the US, or vice versa.
Add to that older treaties like the Paris Convention in 1883, which established basic rules around priority and national treatment, and more modern agreements like TRIPS, the Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, under the WTO. None of these texts anticipated a scenario where the inventor might be an algorithm, or that nearly everything could become obvious to AI.
So the complexity is enormous. Even if we wanted to pass brand new rules to account for AI inventorship or AI obviousness, we'd have to navigate a labyrinth of existing treaties and national laws. And if you read the PCT itself, you won't see direct references to AI. That means any attempt to revise or interpret it for AI scenarios might require new diplomatic conferences or renegotiations.
And that's not a quick process. Treaties like the PCT and TRIPS took years, sometimes decades, to negotiate and ratify. Meanwhile, AI is evolving on a monthly, if not weekly, basis. This mismatch in speed is why many worry that global IP law can't keep up in time to prevent confusion or discourage innovation.
Got it. But keep in mind, when we talk about potentially redefining inventor to account for humans collaborating with AI or addressing the obvious to AI debate, we're not just talking about passing a single piece of legislation in one country. We're talking about potentially revising treaties that govern patent systems around the world.
And that brings us to explore how historically long it took to build today's system, and why that spells trouble if we want to address AI challenges soon.
Let's give our listeners some historical perspective on just how long it can take to get global consensus on patent rules. You mentioned the Paris Convention of 1883. That's over a century old, right?
Yes, it was 140 years ago. The Paris Convention set basic principles, like national treatment of foreign inventors. Countries kept joining over decades, making small amendments. It wasn't a quick, single meeting. Then came the Patent Cooperation Treaty in 1970, which was ratified gradually by member states. Even that took years of negotiation and multiple rounds of revisions. Some countries joined quickly, others took decades to sign on.
And modern frameworks like TRIPS, negotiated during the Uruguay round in the late 80s and early 90s, also took years of trade talks under the GATT-WTO umbrella. Many developing countries resisted certain IP provisions, while developed nations pushed for stronger protections.
Exactly, and that's for relatively straightforward expansions of existing rules. None of them had to define artificial intelligence or tackle AI as inventor. If we propose an AI inventorship treaty or something similar, the complexities multiply. We'd need buy-in not just from the US and the EU, but also from countries with emerging tech sectors, like China, India, Brazil, each with their own strategic interests in AI. That alone could stretch negotiations for a decade or more.
Meanwhile, AI is forging ahead. By the time we hammered out a global agreement, assuming that's even possible, AI could be at an entirely different level. The risk is that patent law becomes irrelevant if it takes too long to adapt, causing inventors and investors to rely on other strategies like trade secrets or skipping formal patents altogether.
I agree. So what's the takeaway? It's going to be very hard to address AI-specific issues in patent law globally at the speed AI demands. National legislation can move faster than treaty changes, but even then, alignment across borders is crucial. If one jurisdiction drastically changes the rules for AI inventions while others do not, it fosters forum shopping or legal uncertainty.
In short, we have this mismatch. AI is leaping forward on a near monthly basis. International patent treaties took decades to form and still rely on 19th and 20th century assumptions about inventorship and non-obviousness. It's a perfect storm for confusion and potential disincentives if you're a global innovator trying to figure out whether your AI-based idea is patentable in 50 different countries.
Yes, and that's why some experts say we might need interim solutions or soft law guidelines while treaties slowly catch up. Because if we wait for full treaty revisions, AI might have advanced far beyond the old definitions anyway. Now, with that in mind, let's turn back to our main narrative, how all of this affects the future of innovation, both enabling and deterring it, and what recommendations might help us bridge this gap before it's too late. On the enabling side, we've already seen how AI can drastically speed up R&D, reduce costs, and open up new avenues, like drug discovery or advanced materials, where progress was painfully slow. That's a huge benefit. If more ideas are coming to market faster, you'd expect an explosion of innovation, assuming people are still incentivized to do that research.
Right. But then we have the deterring side. If potential founders fear that AI will replicate or surpass their product in a few years, they might decide not to build in the first place. Or if IP law can't guarantee ownership of AI-generated inventions, big companies might not invest as heavily in uncertain areas. Also, from a talent perspective, if developers or scientists think their work will be overshadowed by AI, maybe fewer people enter those fields in the first place.
This tension could shape the economics of innovation. Some economists predict that overall, AI leads to a net boom in new ideas because the cost of experimenting is drastically lower. But others caution that once AI can fully autonomously generate new tech, human-driven R&D might slow, especially if legal frameworks don't reward the human part of the equation. And we can't forget that investors play a role in this process. If investors cease to trust the patent system, or they view patents as having less value, the market for new ideas could face a cash crunch, which would impact the pace at which new ideas come to market.
Before we propose solutions to this problem, I think it's worth reflecting on this moment in the human experience.
Yes, we've spent a lot of time discussing how AI might transform or deter innovation from a practical standpoint. But let's take a step back and consider that this issue isn't new. The question, where do ideas actually come from, has fascinated humanity for thousands of years. The Davis saga doesn't just challenge our legal frameworks, it asks us to reconsider the source of creativity, invention, and knowledge.
This is deep stuff, but sometimes it takes a crisis like the impact of AI on innovation to think about these sorts of things. Philosophers have wrestled with this question for thousands of years. Plato, for instance, believed in a realm of what he called forms or ideas that exist beyond the physical world. Under his view, humans don't exactly invent ideas. We more or less remember or recollect them from an eternal, perfect realm. If we took that approach to Daybus, we might say, well, is Daybus tapping into the same realm of ideas, or is it just rearranging patterns?
Exactly. Then along came René Descartes in the 17th century with his famous revelation, "I think, therefore I am." He strongly tied consciousness and self-awareness to the ability to have original thought. That raises the question, if Daybus isn't self-aware, can it truly think in the same way a human does? Or is it purely mechanical?
And then there's Immanuel Kant, who argued that human beings don't just receive information from the world. Our minds also organize it, what he called categories of understanding. If we apply that lens to AI, we might ask, does an AI have its own categories of understanding? Or is the AI just a sophisticated filing and information retrieval system that's incapable of truly appreciating what it ingests? That might be the real crux of the debate. If an AI is merely a sophisticated aggregator, does that count as genuinely conceiving a new idea?
Contemporary philosophers are divided. Some argue that creativity emerges from consciousness. Others place a high value on experience, while others say we overstate the role of self-awareness in invention. Some modern philosophers, like Nick Bostrom, remind us that advanced AI could surpass mere pattern matching, and this raises existential questions about creativity and autonomy. But here's the pivot. AI, especially something like Daybus, forces us to ask if authorship or inventorship requires a human consciousness, or if machine processes can truly generate novel ideas without that subjective experience. And if we follow this debate further down the rabbit hole, what happens when the AI is connected to a robot and the robot can have its own experiences? I can just imagine the next Daybus-like case when a robot says, "I experienced something in the real world, and it caused me to invent this new thing that's useful, novel, and wasn't obvious, until I stumbled on a situation that no human has ever experienced."
Yeah, that's going to upend a lot of the arguments against AI inventions. That's why the Daybus legal case becomes so intriguing. It's not just legal hair-splitting, it's also a test of our philosophical boundaries. All of that resonates with the modern question. If an AI doesn't have intent, personal consciousness, or experience, can it be an inventor in the classical sense?
Right. And for centuries, we've comfortably assumed people, with their unique mental faculties, come up with new inventions. But the Daybus saga suggests we might need to refine or replace that assumption, or else risk ignoring the reality of sophisticated AI-driven invention.
Now this ties directly into another important distinction. Is an AI just a tool, like a microscope or a telescope, or is it doing something that surpasses mere tool status?
Throughout history, humans have created tools to extend our capacities. Telescopes let us see distant galaxies, microscopes reveal hidden microbial worlds, and advanced sensors pick up signals our senses can't detect. Yet in all these cases, we've still credited humans with the discovery. For example, if a scientist uses an electron microscope and finds a new virus, the patent or the paper is authored by the scientist, not by the microscope.
Right. We've always seen these instruments as passive. They don't initiate the discovery, they just facilitate it. The human is the active mind, designing experiments, interpreting data, forming hypotheses. The tool is just an enabler, albeit a powerful one. Now, the question is, does AI remain an enabler, or is it crossing into territory where it's making conceptual leaps on its own.
This is exactly where Daybus jolts us. If the AI is generating inventions that no one explicitly prompted, or if it's conceptualizing solutions the developers never anticipated, are we dealing with something qualitatively different from a microscope or a supercomputer that crunches numbers? Some argue that AI, as we have it now, is still akin to a tool, just more complex. Others suggest advanced AIs exhibit a form of creative reasoning we can't entirely reduce to input plus predictable output.
That debate underlies the big dilemma for patent offices and courts. If an AI is just a tool, then a human inventor should always be credited. If AI truly engages in autonomous, unforeseen creativity, the law might need to consider it as an inventor-like agent, something that breaks centuries of precedent. And that's not an academic question if the AI is generating, say, a life-saving drug or a brand new approach to quantum computing.
Precisely. It also echoes the philosophical question of agency. Tools lack agency. They don't choose to do anything. They follow user commands. But a system like Daybus or a future superintelligent AI agent might, at some level, choose lines of inquiry, though that's still heavily debated among AI experts. For centuries, we haven't needed to consider a microscope's agency, but we might need to consider an AI's agency if it starts generating ideas beyond direct human instructions.
And that potential shift leads us right back to the IP and patent conundrum, because if an AI isn't just a passive instrument, then awarding a patent to a strictly human inventor might feel disingenuous. Yet awarding it to the AI raises all these philosophical and legal headaches we've talked about.
Exactly. So, to circle back, philosophically, humans have long asked where ideas come from. Plato, Descartes, Kant, and modern thinkers each had different takes. Practically, we've always treated our inventions as human creations aided by passive tools. But AI is blurring that line. So as we close this philosophical interlude, let's head into our final recommendations, keeping in mind that we're grappling with something that touches the very heart of how we define creativity, authorship, and discovery. So we've laid out the big picture problems and some broad solutions, but we also want to leave you with concrete, practical steps you can take, whether you're an innovator, business owner, or investor navigating AI's impact on innovation. If you're an innovator or creator, document your human role. If you're using AI to help invent or create, keep track of what prompts you gave and which decisions were truly human-led. This record can strengthen your case for inventorship or authorship if legal questions arise. Think about what we lawyers call defensive disclosures. A defensive disclosure is any public announcement that contains the essential details of your invention. If you're worried patents might be risky or too entangled with AI's role, consider publishing a short defensive disclosure. What this does is it deters other companies or inventors, because when they make a patent application, it shows up as prior art, which will most likely cause their patent application to be rejected. So, it provides a way to prevent others from patenting the same idea. It won't give you exclusivity the same way a patent would, but it secures your right to use it, and it blocks others from claiming your idea. Embrace AI, but highlight originality. Don't rely solely on AI's ideas. Emphasize the uniquely human aspects of your process, your intuition, real-world testing, and expert judgment. Make that human spark part of your product's value.
If you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, integrate AI with human oversight. Differentiate your company by blending AI's efficiency with the human insight that fosters creativity, empathy, and accountability. Leverage AI's capabilities, but make sure that humans stay in the loop. Revamp your IP strategy. Consider shorter patent timelines, or focus on trade secrets if AI-driven innovation happens too fast for normal 20-year patents. Ask yourself, how do we highlight human inventiveness? Or should we pivot to process-driven value over a static patent? Demonstrate your AI edge to investors. Show investors how you're actively using AI to accelerate product development. Clarify how you handle ownership issues, like AI obviousness, and reassure stakeholders you have robust plans for evolving IP rules.
If you're an investor or venture capitalist, assess IP fragility. When a startup claims they have a patented AI-driven invention, dig deeper. Ask how the AI was used, who contributed the inventive step, and whether the patent claims could be challenged as obvious to AI. Diversify beyond traditional patent valuation. In an AI world, intangible assets like datasets, user feedback loops, prompt engineering expertise can be more defensible than a single invention patent. Look for companies that cultivate agile, AI-focused R&D habits. Incentivize continuous iteration. Support projects that show they can rapidly prototype and adapt. AI allows faster experimentation, so the winners will be those who embrace constant improvement, rather than betting on a one-time breakthrough.
Yes, exactly. Whether you're a solo creator, running a tech startup, or funding the next wave of innovation, it's crucial to adapt. AI won't slow down for us, so we either harness it or get left behind.
And on that note, let's segue into our final thoughts, tying this all together with how we can balance innovation incentives, legal structures, and the rapid march of AI.
Right. We've talked about the moral of Sarah Anderson's case. Creators worry they won't own their outputs if AI learns from them. And the Daybus saga, where a determined inventor wanted to name an AI on the patent itself.
We've seen how AI is a massive force multiplier, offering unprecedented productivity gains and opening frontiers we never dreamed possible, especially for smaller players. Yet, it can also create a vaporware effect, overshadow new ventures, and blur the lines of IP ownership.
Both examples underscore how far our legal and philosophical assumptions are being tested.
International treaties like the Patent Cooperation Treaty evolved over decades, but AI leaps forward in months. That mismatch means we risk letting our legal frameworks fall behind, possibly deterring innovation or forcing inventors into trade secrets instead of patents.
If anyone in government listens to our podcast, we have the following advice. Revise IP laws to reflect human collaboration with AI. Consider short-term or conditional patents to keep pace with rapid innovation cycles. Offer incentives, such as R&D tax credits and subsidies, for projects that merge AI power with human ingenuity, and recognize international cooperation is necessary to avoid fragmentation.
We also can't ignore that investors might shift how they value patents. Maybe they'll favor process or data-driven advantages over static IP claims. In a world of high-speed AI iteration, how fast you discover is more vital than what you know at a single point in time.
So to sum up, AI can supercharge innovation or scare people off. Ownership in a world with AI gets murky, so laws will need updates. The future has huge potential if we get incentives right, or it can slump if we let fear win.
That's it in a nutshell. As we keep saying, AI isn't slowing down. Are we going to adapt fast enough? We don't think AI is mankind's last invention, but we do think it's a powerful tool that augments human creativity and brilliance. We just need to recalibrate our understanding of what innovation looks like in a world where intelligence is no longer strictly a human domain.
And that's where we'll leave you. If you're an innovator, a policymaker, an investor, or an entrepreneur, or just fascinated by the future of technology, keep these questions and takeaways in mind. Because AI isn't slowing down, and neither should we.
Right, and that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in to the Verlicity AI podcast. If you found this episode helpful or have your own thoughts on how AI will shape innovation, reach out to us at verlicity.ai. Share this episode with your network too.
Until next time, I'm Christian Worthington.
And I'm Sandra Giffen. Stay curious, stay open-minded, and we'll see you on the next episode of Verlicity AI.